Spurs are into their second season with Ange Postecoglou as manager. They've just won 4-1 this weekend. How did they do it? Are they on the up? I mean, Ange said that in his second season, he always wins something. So it feels like this season could be the season where Tottenham potentially get the Europa League, push to the top four, win the FA Cup. What are they going to do? Let's see. Just before I start the video, I'm just going to ask you to pop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. The last video got 12k views. It was on Leeds United in the Championship and how good they are. This is a similar video for a Premier League side in Spurs, so subscribe to the channel whilst you're here, please. A part of me feels like West Ham are just really bad, especially with this new manager, Lopetegui. You know, transition out of the Moyes era, it doesn't look too good, but we can touch on that a bit more later. But Spurs did look good. Since last season, they've definitely evolved tactically, because I know for the most part, it was very much a 4-2-3-1 with Maddison in that roaming role, but now they've dropped Kuluveski back a little bit. Bissouma's more of a pivot, opposed to, you know, in a double pivot, it's more of a single pivot. And it's looking a little bit different from last season for Spurs. And if you cast your mind back about 12 months at the start of the 2023-24 season, they were top at some point. They started off really well. They got a couple of injuries and the team started to tire a little bit and they dropped off. But we've seen from Ange's team that they can sustain runs for short periods, doing really well. But as they've evolved more, is it going to get better? And are they going to be able to carry on these runs for longer? So at the time of recording, they sit in 7th place. They've won 3 of their last 4 matches. And they're looking pretty decent. 4 points behind Villa and Arsenal, who are at the top. And they are 4 points off of the Champions League spots already, where Aston Villa sit. But we're only 8 games in, so you can't really read into the table too much at this point. So I want to touch on the tactics a little bit, which they used against West Ham, because I feel like there was some changes in that, especially, as I say, from last season, which feel pretty big. So the first one is the fact that Kuluveski is on this inside right position. I'm not going to call it a right centre mid, it's not that. I'm not going to call it an attacking mid, it's not that. I'm not going to call it a right winger, because it certainly isn't that. You can see for the first goal, he runs out wide, and Johnson starts from wide and runs in. And within a couple of touches, Kuluveski is cut in and scored a goal. And if he was just being played as a right winger for this goal, Brandon Johnson was out of the equation, and, you know, as Sarr in midfield, let's say, he wouldn't be picking up this much space, because Johnson's run to cut inside makes West Ham's defenders panic a little bit, because that means it's a 4-on-4 situation, because West Ham are playing a 4-back, and it means that there's no way that the defenders can double up, that it's man for man, and Kuluveski, give him space, give him time, is an elite player. And at half-time, Ange made a sub. He bought off James Maddison, and he bought on Pape Sarr. Now, on paper, that seems like quite a interesting sub in a way, because Maddison is very good. He's a playmaker, he roams, he creates things out of nothing, and Sarr is a bit more of a destroyer in the midfield. He's a tidy player, he plays tidy passes, he's box to box, but compared to Maddison, his playmaking abilities are nowhere near it. And I'm paraphrasing here, but Ange basically said that the likes of Rodriguez, Paqueta, Souček in midfield for West Ham needed somebody to sort of say, you know, if you're going to try and fight us, we're going to fight back. And that's what Sarr was doing, because Maddison, he's not a destroyer. He's not going to, you know, sort of threaten teams with his physical attributes. It's all technical. And bringing on Sarr to pivot with Bissouma just meant that West Ham midfield couldn't control the physical side of it. And Kuluveski was still playing in that inside right attacking midfield role, I suppose you could call it. And you can see from the second goal that because Sarr's on the pitch now, Kuluveski has a bit more freedom to roam forward, and you can see that Spurs players were running at West Ham. Kuluveski picks up the ball, he has all of these options to pass. He thinks, no, I'm going to stop the ball, I've got a runner to the right of me, passes the ball, and Son, it was, you know, poor goalkeeping, but he made it a goal. And it was really interesting from Spurs to see how intense they were. You can see here just how they constantly was trying to get out West Ham. They've got 3 or 4 men running at them here whilst they're in possession. And it means as a defensive team for West Ham, having players trying to get in behind you when you've already got a deep block just makes it so difficult. And the thing is, there's ways that West Ham can counter it. They did get the goal to make it 1-0 in the match, where Bowen was down the right, crosses it to the back post, and Kudus scores. West Ham just didn't really have an answer, and this is what I mean with Lopetegui. I'm just not convinced on how good he is. When he was at Wolves, I know that he kept them up. I think it was a couple of seasons ago now, but I don't think he was that good of a manager. I don't think he really made any you know, groundbreaking tactical decisions. I don't think he was exactly the greatest man manager. And when you've gone from David Moyes, who, yes, I know a lot of the fans didn't like him and they wanted to change, but when you've gone from, you know, defensive man in Moyes, who, as much as people didn't like him, he was good. He got the team playing a certain way and they all knew their role. With Lopetegui, it just feels like the players just don't quite know what they're doing, because it's still a defensive brand of football where they want to counter, but they're not looking as lethal on the counter. When you've got Kudus on one side, you've got Paqueta through the middle, Souček crashing the box, you've got Bowen, you've got Antonio up front. This is a mixture which created quite a decent recipe for West Ham. I don't know what that metaphor was, but it worked for West Ham. And we've got the same personnel with Lopetegui, and it just doesn't seem to be working. Fulkrug's coming in and he's not done too well. Somerville, I feel like he should be starting in the Premier League. With how good he was last season for Leeds, Championship Player of the Season, I think he was. How is he not starting? But in this match, Spurs dominated possession, unsurprisingly. They had more than twice as much XG as what West Ham did. And I'm going to bookend this video again by where I started it, by saying, are West Ham really bad? Are Spurs really good? Is it somewhere in the middle? I'm not sure, but when Ange says with chest that he always wins something in his second season, and they're playing better football than they were doing last season, they've got the Europa League, FA Cup, a more bolstered squad. So